Hello and welcome back to another Coriander Saturday. I've got a fun video planned for us today. It is all things Cali Co for today's video. Cali Co pre-cuts have started shipping to quilt shops, and so I am going to be talking about all kinds of things related to Cali Co. We have a quick quilt share of the quilts that I've designed for this collection. I have shared these previously, but it's always good to have a reminder. And then I am going to be diving into the Cali Co mystery block of the month, which kicks off in January. I've got more details about that. I'm answering questions I received over on my blog in regard to the quilt along. I'm also going to be chatting about the solids that match Cali Co. And of course, we have some Coriander Fun Finds. So stick around. For those of you unfamiliar with my Cali Co fabrics, here is a quick peek at these pretty happy prints in this collection. It is a full rainbow of color. You guys know I love using all the colors. I tend to switch back and forth between all the colors, and then we'll have a collection like a bloom, which I talked about last week, where it is a smaller palette. So we go from the big rainbow of color to a smaller palette, and Cali Co is definitely that full rainbow of color. The scale on these prints is so much fun. I designed this collection really wanting to highlight fabrics that work beautifully for piecing. So we've got all small scale prints. So you can use these in small piecing as well as in larger piecing. If you're interested in seeing this collection in more detail, I will link to where I chatted about each of the fabrics and showed each of the fabrics in this line. I do that with all of my fabric lines when they start debuting to quilt shops so that you can see the fabrics. I'll link to that. And then the next thing that I want to do is quickly just show the quilts that I've shared in previous videos as well. I did share a Cali Co trunk show, so I'll link to that if you want to see these quilts in more detail. The trunk show videos that I share are where I talk about the backing, the binding, the quilting that I chose for the quilts, the pre-cuts that you need, the yardage requirements, all of those things. So those videos are just full of information about the quilt pattern details that you might like. So I'll link to that. This is just a quick roundup of the patterns I've done for this collection. First up, I'll be sharing two that you've seen most recently. The In Stitches mini quilt. This was one pattern that I designed for a bloom, but felt that it just really needed to be shown in Cali Co. So I still need to get this one off to David to get quilted. I haven't decided on the quilting I want to use on it, but that'll be a fun decision to make. Next up, you all saw this quilt last week. This is my new bespoke pattern that I just released. So this uses all of the white prints, the prints with the white backgrounds in Cali Co. And one thing I wanted to mention about this quilt specifically, if you watched last week's video, I had a number of people who commented saying that the scale on this quilt looked so much different from the scale on the quilt I had hanging in the backdrop. And I thought the same thing when I watched the video back. They looked like they were two different sized blocks, but they were in fact same sized blocks. So if you were one of the people wondering about why this quilt looked like it used bigger blocks, it's just because it was closer to the camera than the quilt in the backdrop, and that made it look like it was made with different blocks. But 12-inch blocks is what you're looking at for this quilt, and I'll link to the video from last week if you want more information about this one. And then all the rest of these were in my original Cali Co trunk show. So first up, we have Jelly Roll Jam. This one is a jelly roll quilt, and it's scrappy and wonderful and could easily be made using scraps from your scrap bin. But quick peek at this one. I do want to show you this quilting. This is really one of my favorite quiltings. This specific quilting pantograph. I love this. These little, it's circles nested. It's a pattern by Julie Hurt, and we've used this on a number of quilts, mostly jelly roll quilts. I don't know why. I just think it works so well for jelly rolls specifically. The scale can be bigger so that it fits right in these shapes, or you can go smaller like we did here. And I just think it's always such a pretty pattern to use. So I love that quilting pattern. I'm sure I'm going to be using that one again. Actually, the A Bloom In Stitches mini quilt, that very first sewing machine quilt that I showed you guys, for the A Bloom version, we used this pattern, this quilting pattern, and it looked really cute on that sewing machine. So it's just a really neat one. All right, so that was Jelly Roll Jam. Next up is Dashing. This is an older pattern that we redid in Cali Co. So this is what this one looks like. It's a fun churn dash star quilt. The next quilt I'm going to be showing you is a charm pack quilt. When I design my charm pack quilts, I always like if they are a nice roomy quilt. Sometimes charm pack quilts can be kind of small in size, and maybe that's what you're looking for, but I think it's nice to have roomier options too, so that you can pick up a charm pack or two and end up with a nice roomy quilt. So this is like a charm, nice big quilt. If you visit the Etsy shop for any of my patterns, you can see the finished sizes of the quilts. That's always included in my listings, as well as the yardage requirements. So you'll know, does this take one charm pack or two? What kind of background yardage do I need? All of those yardage questions you might have before you purchase the pattern are easily viewable. This next quilt is the all-around star quilt. It's also the kit quilt from Moda. So this is the one that would come in that pretty Moda box, all kitted up and ready to sew. Another scrappy one. You can also purchase this pattern on its own, and it's a great scrap buster. So this is all-around star. And then the last quilt to share is the barn star quilt for this collection. And it is this little pretty right here. These are 40-inch finished quilts, so perfect for baby quilts, wall hangings, table toppers. And I've started designing one for every collection when my new fabric line's coming out, because they're fun to design, they're fun to make, and sometimes you just need a quick to finish project. So that is the final quilt in my lineup of Cali Co quilts. And as I said, I'll link to the trunk show. So if you want to see those in more detail, that was a really quick reminder of what I've shared previously. So if you want to see those in more detail, make sure to watch that video. All right, let us move into, what do we want to do next? Let's do Coriander Fun Finds next, because there is another Cali Co quilt that I came across that I thought I would share with all of you. And it is this one right here. This is the Jolly Bar quilt that Fat Quarter Shop designed for the Cali Co collection. So if you purchase a Jolly Bar of Cali Co, which is only available at Fat Quarter Shop, you will get this pattern for free. And a Jolly Bar is basically the equivalent of 2 charm packs. Those are 5-inch by 10-inch cuts. Jolly Bars are 5-inch by 10-inch cuts of the fabrics, which if you cut in half, you end up with double charm packs, if that makes sense. So I wanted to share this with you. It's always fun when they have the Jolly Bars of my collections available. So, and the other thing I wanted to mention to all of you is, if Ryan and I ever don't quite zoom in as much as you would like when I'm talking about something down here, if you're watching on a device, on a tablet or on your phone, you can actually pinch and zoom videos just like you do with photos, which is a helpful tip that not everybody realizes that you can do. So if that happens to be you and you want to see something a little bit closer, pinch and zoom and you can check things out a little bit easier. The other fun find I have for today is a free pattern. I know this time of year we might be looking for some quick to finish quilt patterns or maybe small projects, and this is a free pillow pattern by Vanessa Gertzen of Lala Boutique, and it uses mini charms to make this adorable holiday themed pillow. This is what the layout looks like right here. So these cute little presents in a pillow format. And I will have this linked down in the description box as well. It's a free download. So if you want a fun, quick pillow project using those mini charms that we sometimes collect, this might be one that you would like to check out. So that's my other fun find for today. Now, we are going to spend the rest of the time chatting about the Cali Co mystery block of the month. It kicks off in January. I have the fabric requirements over on my blog. They have actually been over there for a number of months. So if you have not yet downloaded those, you can zip on over there and do so. Here's what that looks like. It is a fat eighth bundle friendly sew along. I will tell you, it is also very nice for using your scraps. You do need some longer skinny scraps, and then you're going to need a lot of square scraps. So if you are working from your scrap bin, you can kind of tuck that information down in there and pull from your scrap bin. But it's a great scrap busting sew along that we're going to be doing. So fat eighth bundle of Cali Co, and then your background fabric, border, binding, and backing fabrics, and you'll be all set. As I said earlier, the pre-cuts from Cali Co have started shipping to quilt shops. Yardage is going to be soon following, so before too long we'll have all that we need in the quilt shops to purchase for this upcoming block of the month. You don't need to use Cali Co to participate. You can use whatever fabrics you want to use, and you don't need to sign up or do anything fancy to participate. I will be releasing the block patterns on my blog in PDF format that you can download and print out at your leisure, and the block tutorials will be happening right here in my regular Saturday videos. I've also put together a calendar that you can download and print out. This is available over on my blog as well. And it gives us all of the release dates for 2025 when the blocks are going to be coming out. I am going to be releasing them on the third Saturday of every month, and they're going to be just tucked right in with my regular Saturday videos that I share here every Saturday. So the first one is going to come out on January 18th. Along with block 1, I'm going to be releasing some cutting information, just some helpful introduction information that might help you along. I know I like to provide different ways of cutting. Some of us like to cut in advance. Some of us like to cut as we go. So I'm going to be providing some information to help you along in that regard. We always have questions about starching, so we'll chat about that. And, just some helpful information coming out with that first block on January 18th. And then after that, the blocks release every third Saturday. The final block, block number 12, as well as the finishing instructions come out right before Christmas on December 20th is when those instructions will come out. So you can print this out so that you know when those dates are coming along. This is going to be a nicely paced block of the month, and having several weeks in between each of the blocks gives you time to get that done without having to feel too rushed. So those are the dates there. Now we're going to move into, should we do solid matches? Let's do solid matches next. Whenever a new fabric line comes out, I always like to provide the Bella solids that are going to match this collection nicely. So I have pulled the solids that match, and I have them listed here as well. So you can screenshot what I'm showing you if you want to, but I'm also going to put together a graphic that I will have over on my blog. So if you want to reference these solids, you've got that information over there. I always have a matching Motabella Solids tab on the top of my blog. So if you want to revisit previous lines, you can always find those matching Bellas on my blog anytime you might need that information. All right. But for Cali Co, here's what we're looking at. A whole rainbow. Like I said, I love these colors. I think they're so pretty. This is just my favorite sherbet colored palette. I always like these warmer colors, the colors that have just the warm, sunshiny tones to them. And I think it's so pretty. I thought you guys might think it was fun to see this little graphic too. This is something that I turn into Moda every time I turn in a new collection. So this is exactly the first page of the document that I would have turned into them for Cali Co. And it shows what font I would like to have used. You can see over here the font that I would like to have used for the collection, the little graphic that I would like to have used on the selvage, and then it lists all the Bella solids that I would like the designs, the prints that I'm turning in to match. And then the selvage quote is also included on this document. So you'll see on the Cali Co selvage, it says, "Beautiful things come together one stitch at a time." And that just kind of gives them an overview of colors, fonts, and then that selvage quote. And then following this page comes the document where I am turning in all of the prints and the colors and everything for the collection. So let's take a look at these solids. Let's spread these out so we can see all of these maybe a little bit better here. This is such a fun collection. I've enjoyed working with these fabrics so much. It's just a joyful, happy collection. And I always like when these collections come out right as we are kind of heading into winter. It's going to start getting, well, it is already dark way too early and dark way too late. So way too early in the evening, dark. Way too late in the morning, dark. So I like having these bright, happy colors that we get to play with when our winter might seem a little bit sad. I'm a sunshine person, so I always love all the sunshine we get in the summer. Okay, so here is your palette of color. This shade is Flamingo. The number on it is $2.99, and it is going to match these pinky reds down here. The next shade we have is Carnation. This is number 384, and it goes with just these two little pinky pinks we have over here. I don't have the white pulled, but if you're pulling the Bella Solid for the white, you would want 200. There is also this white on white right here, which is a little white on white polka dot. It is the same print as this print right here. So those would be two nearly white options, and then the Bella Solid is 200. 200 matches all of my collections that I have ever designed for Moda. So that's the white that you would want. Here we have Melon. This is $2.95. For the yellows, there's two different yellow options. There is Goldenrod, which is number 81, and then also Soft Yellow, which is number 148. So Goldenrod is going to match these darker yellows, and then this little cherry print down here is going to go better with Soft Yellow. So you can see that. Moving to the greens, we have a darker green and a lighter green. Pistachio number 134, which is this guy right here. He's going to match these darker greens pretty nicely. And then if you wanted something a little bit lighter, this is Light Lime. The color on this is 100, and that's going to go pretty nicely with those lighter greens. Moving down here to these aqua shades, this color is green. It's number 65, and it's going to go nice with the darker shades here. And then this shade is Breeze. It's 132, and that's going to go nicely with this little light cherry print. Now, when we move into the darker blues, we have Cobalt. This is number 227, and it's going to look nice with these darker shades here. Set them right there. And then this is 30s blue. The number on this is 25. And that's what you would want if you're wanting to match this lighter blue here. The purples, Petal Pink in the number 212, is going to look nice with these shades. And then moving into these grays, we have two options that we can use. These are the two grays that I use most often in my fabric lines. This one is Etchings Charcoal. The number is 171, and this one is Etchings Slate. It's just a little bit lighter, and the number is 170. I think Etchings Charcoal is going to be a beautiful mix here. You can see how that looks with those grays. And Etchings Slate would be just a little bit lighter. So two options there for your grays, depending on how dark you wanted to go for those. And that sums up these solids. So many pretty fabrics to choose from. Actually, if you wanted to make just an all solid quilt using this palette, that would be amazing. It would be so pretty. I'm gonna lay these all out. I always like when I gather these solids together just to see how they play together so nicely. I have to just stack them up just so. I always love them. Love them. Love me a sherbety palette. There they are. Just like that. Wouldn't that be a pretty solids quilt? I actually have a pattern I need to revisit and maybe release as an individual pattern. It's called Sherbet Town, and it is a house cottage sort of pattern, and it does use just solids. As the name implies, it uses these colors, so I might really need to think about releasing that, at least going back and visiting that pattern again and giving that some thought, because that would be a lot of fun. All right, so we've got the Cali Co solids chatted about. let's move in to talking more then about questions I've received about the Cali Co block of the month. I always think these Q&A times in these videos is fun. It gives me a chance to answer questions that I might not have thought about, that you guys have been wondering. So it's real helpful if I know what questions you have so that I can be the most help to everybody. But I got a lot of questions over on my blog when I very first released these fabric requirements for the Cali Co mystery block of the month. So I've printed out the questions I received. I think I answered all of them, or at least most of them, over on the blog. But I know not everyone reads the comments. I know that not everyone visits the blog either, so you might not have been aware of some of these questions, and I know this can be helpful. So let's just start here at the top. Deb says, I have pre-cuts made from scraps from quilts and a stash that fills every wall of my quilt room. Would I still be welcome in this block of the month and going totally scrappy? I've been quilting 50 years, so it's a lot of scraps. Thanks. Yes, absolutely, Deb. You are welcome to sew along with your scraps. This quilt along is going to work really well for busting scraps. So if you wanted to wait and just kind of take a peek at block one and see, is this something I want to participate in or not? You certainly could do that. Get a feel for the first block, maybe even get a feel for the first two blocks, and then decide if it's something that you want to dive into or not. But it is going to work really nicely for scraps. And you'll get a pretty good idea of the different sizes of scraps that you're going to need from that first block. And the next question comes from Beverly Noble. I can't wait for your mystery block of the month. Is there any place online to pre-order Cali Co? So there were places that were taking pre-orders, and I had answered Beverly a while ago. But for those of you wondering that same question about pre-orders, if you ever wonder when a fabric line is first showing to quilt shops about pre-orders, a nice way to check is just to do a Google search for example Cali Co pre-orders and see what online quilt shops pop up for you. It's possible that if you stopped in at your favorite local quilt shop that they also might be able to take a pre-order for you. So it's definitely worth checking with your local quilt shops as well. Right now, you could easily go and purchase the pre-cuts and the yardages that you would need because we are just having the fabrics arrive to quilt shops. So if you don't see it just yet, within the next week or two, you should start seeing it pop up all over the place. If your local shop doesn't carry Cali Co, there are online shops that are carrying the full line. Donna Dodd says, I just downloaded the materials supply list. Can't wait. Could this block of the month mystery also be done in your new colors collection that has some black and white? I've been wanting to use it in something. So the collection Donna is referring to is the Coriander Colors collection. This is the Fat Eighth bundle from Coriander Colors. And the palette is very similar to Cali Co. It has a darker red, and then it has a lighter gray, and it has the blacks, which Cali Co don't have. But all of these colors kind of in the center here do match up really nicely with Cali Co. So sort of a similar palette. And yes, you could absolutely use Coriander Colors for this block of the month. If you were purchasing, you would need more than a Fat Eighth bundle of Coriander Colors because it's a smaller line. So there is less fabric in this Fat Eighth bundle than there is in the Cali Co bundle. If you look at the fabric requirements, it says a Fat Eighth bundle of Cali Co, which is 40 Fat Eighths. So you would want to have the equivalent if you're using something different. So that's that question. Mary says, always love your fabric lines and mystery sew-alongs. So very generous of you to provide the pattern. Can't wait to see and hold the fabric. It's also fun for us designers when you guys start getting the fabrics and we get to start seeing what you're making and your plans for your upcoming quilts. It's just as much fun for us as it is for you all. It's probably even cuter than the online pictures. Fabrics do tend to look prettier in person than we can ever show them via photos. So that's also fun when people get the fabrics and they say, oh my goodness, it's even prettier than I imagined. Without giving away anything, would the pattern lend itself to making more blocks to enlarge the size? Might get the fat quarter bundle. Yes, you could easily enlarge it. The sampler, it's a sampler style quilt, does have sashing, so you would also need to expand the sashing, but it could easily be enlarged. Beryl Stutz asks, Corey, what size is this going to finish at? I'm looking forward to participating. It finishes as I wrote it at 52 by 67. But again, if you wanted something roomier, you could certainly make it bigger, whether that would be by adding additional blocks or additional borders, wider borders. Both of those options would give you a bigger quilt. Teresa Gerard says, I'm looking forward to this one as it will be my first block of the month with you. I've just ordered the bundle. Being in Australia, I'm not sure I'll be able to get the yardage. Do you have a suggested alternate Bella Solid for the background? Yes, Bella Solid in the color 200, which is off-white, is a great swap for the white-on-white dot from the Cali Co collection. Alternatively, if any of your quilt shops carry the Coriander Seeds line of basics, any of those white-on-whites will match Cali Co. And the one that I especially like is the little ditzy print because Cali Co. has that print in colors. Let me show you. So here, this purple one. Coriander Colors has this print in a white-on-white version. This print right here in a white-on-white version, which is really pretty if you wanted to use that, and that is something that you have available to you. Bunny Grant, the 2025 mystery quilt sounds great. Would you rate as intermediate? You know, I'm always kind of hesitant to label quilts with a specific skill set. I've chatted about that in previous videos because I don't like to limit people. Some people, beginners, are very able to take on what might be called an intermediate or advanced quilt pattern, just depending on their confidence. And so what I will tell you is if you are comfortable with flip and stitch corners and half square triangles, those two techniques specifically, you won't have any problem with this block of the month. And it's a smaller size at 52 by 67, so we're not working with a big quilt. That's another thing that can be a little bit intimidating, is putting blocks together into maybe a queen size quilt or a king size quilt. That can be a little bit more intimidating. So you know, if you're confident in those two techniques, you should be all set. So that was half square triangles and then stitch and flip corners. Sarah asks, I'm looking forward to this. I have one question I hope you can answer without spoiling the mystery. Is this a sampler? It is a sampler. Every block that is released each month will be different from the blocks prior. Gail says, hi Corey, I can't wait for the sew along. I have a bundle of your sun-washed fabric line that I have been waiting to use and was wondering if it would work on this block of the month, or do I need smaller print fabrics? You can use sun-washed, the check fabrics within that bundle, those larger 1-inch checks. I would use carefully. There would probably be places where you could tuck those in. Some spots they're not going to work as well. But overall, the sun-washed bundle should work pretty nicely for you. I made all of the blocks using Tilda fabrics, a bunch of florals. I kept to kind of a medium / small scale on those, and that worked really nicely. There's nothing really super tiny as far as the piecing, but you know, when you're making quilts, sometimes those larger scale prints don't show up as nicely in piecing as smaller scale prints do, kind of across the board. So Cheryl Graham says, Corey, I'm so excited. My Fed8 bundle is on its way to me, and I'm getting ready to order the rest of the Mystery Project fabrics as soon as they hit the shelves. I have one question for you. If we wanted to switch out the red border fabric, let me pull my fabric requirements here so you can see that. Oh, of course, all the way at the bottom. So the fabric that I suggested using was 29190-12, and when we pull these, let me get to my reds here. It's this print right here. This is what I am using for my quilt, and that's the one that I mocked it up in, and I really like the way that looked. But I also mocked it up in quite a few other borders. I didn't share them on my blog, but it's going to look nice in a lot of different colors. So if one of these other prints, or even if you're using Cali Co for your piecing, even if you have something, a large scale print, maybe something from Sunwashed, that large scale print from Sunwashed would be really pretty with Cali Co as a border fabric. So, you know, even if you're using something a little bit different and you want to use a different border color, you know, something that frames it out nicely is going to work well, whether it's from Cali Co. or whether it's from a different fabric line. But yeah, you can definitely swap out that red if you wanted to. See, there was a little more to that question. Possibly a yellow or a green. Will that still look good with the mystery blocks? I liked the way this one looked with a little more contrast for that outside border, so I would probably go on the darker side of things. If I was using one of the yellows, for example, I would not choose this lighter yellow. You know, I'd go with one of the darker yellows just so it has a little more contrast. It does go up against the background fabric. So there will be a narrow background fabric border followed by the outer border. So it's not going right up against your blocks, which allows us to be, you know, to have a wider variety of border colors that we could choose since it doesn't butt right up against those blocks. That is the last question that I had over on my blog. If you have more questions as you've been hearing me chat about the Cali Co. block of the month, feel free to leave those in the comments below the video. If you have questions about the quilts I shared, you can check out that trunk show and that might be helpful. If you have questions about the Cali Co. fabrics, watching the initial video that I shared about all of these fabrics might be helpful. And of course, leave questions that you have so that I can help you out here on the channel. I hope to have a lot of you participating in the Cali Co. block of the month. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I always enjoy sewing along with all of you. I've made all of the blocks, as I said, and I really enjoyed making them. And so now I get to make one in Cali Co. because I haven't made it yet in Cali Co. I know what it's going to look like. I've mocked everything up, so I know exactly what it's going to look like. But sitting down and actually making those blocks is going to be a lot of fun, and sewing along with all of you is always such a treat. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I will catch you again next time.